Hi, everybody. Welcome to our IMG Academy Coaches Corner. I'm pleased to have a great panel of female coaches with me today, and we're going to talk about the journey of being a female coach. I want to first thank Scott Dean, Josh Perdokis, and Jason Elias for putting this together and giving us the opportunity to talk to people today. And as you see, we do all have our masks on to follow our COVID protocols, but we'll take them down when we're talking and then, of course, put them back on. So this fabulous panel that I have with me, we're going to ask them some questions and talk to them. Obviously, March is our Women's History Month, and we want to really learn what it's like to be a female coach here at IMG Academy, but also throughout their careers. So I'm pleased to introduce Jennifer Sepielli. Jen is been here since 2015, and she's one of our girls basketball coaches. We also have Kim Dean. Kim's been here since 2010. She's one of our girls soccer coaches. We have Kelsey Richardson. Kelsey is one of our newest members of the crew. She's been here since 2019 and is a coach in girls lacrosse. In our back, we have Heather Nolan. Heather's been here since 2011 and is currently our golf program manager after coaching for a while in the golf program. Margie Zessinger has been here. I think she wins the prize for longest standing. So 2003 was when Margie started, and she's currently our head of female tennis with the academy. We have Lindsay Hamilton also in the back, who's been here since 2015 and is currently our head of mental conditioning. And then finally, of course, last but not least, we have Shell Daly. Shell's been here since 2006, and she's our director of girls basketball. My name's Taryn Morgan. I'm the VP for Athletic and Personal Development here, and I've been here since 2006, started as a mental coach, and now have the opportunity to work with a lot of amazing coaches here on campus. I do want to shout out all the female coaches. We could only select a few, and all of our staff here at IMG who day in and day out are making this place as amazing as it is. I also want to shout out the wider Endeavor female staff. It's not the opportunity that we have, and it's not as good as it can be if we don't have amazing people working across the company. So the flow today, I have some questions, and we'll have a couple answers for each of them. And as I said, they'll take their masks off to answer and then put them back on in between so we stay within our protocols. Ready to go, ladies?
Ready.
Fantastic. So first question, what female outside of coaching has had the biggest impact on you as a coach? Margie, can you answer that one first for us?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Taryn, for taking the time to do this panel for us. It means a lot for our company. But I would say not a day goes by for me where I don't think about where I've come from, where I'm at, and where I want to go as a female. And that where I came from part, I hold in my pocket every day because we have challenges every day as coaches here. The foundation of my family growing up, I had some amazing women in my family relationships with my mom, my grandmother, my sister, my aunts and cousins. So I was really blessed to have that. But there was one aunt that really stood out to me, and she was my relentless number one fan. I mean, she followed me as a tennis player into my coaching. She was the aunt that sent me the news clippings of myself, and if she was in a store and saw a tennis racket shirt, she would have to buy it for me. So that love was very powerful. And she passed away from pancreatic cancer, but I hold her every day to my side. So that is, something to really always have in your pocket as a female when you have tough days here is where you came from.
Yeah, those role models are so important. How about for you, Coach Shell?
Well, for me, it was Barbara Jordan, who was the first African American person voted into the Senate. And I remember her just from being a little girl, watching her on TV and listening to her speak. She was so powerful. But one thing that stood out is when I watched her on TV and just watched her movements, then I turned around and watched my parents, and they were so locked in. And they were so proud. My grandmother would say, "Oh, that's just wonderful. She's the first." And then, I got the opportunity to actually meet this lady. And she was my mentor for women's basketball at Texas. So I was very fortunate. I seen her day in and day out, and I got time to really spend with her. It was just something that I will never ever forget. I'll see posters of her. I'll see, there's a big, huge statue of her, and I was just like, wow, I had the opportunity to really sit down and get to know her. And she had a beautiful voice. Not only when she sung, but when she spoke, it was captivating. I mean, you wanted to just be around her just because of how she spoke. But she came from humble beginnings and she made it and she was able to really change the world. She was really active in civil rights, which was something, at the time when I was growing up, was something that was prevalent and still is today when you really start to think about it. But I had so much respect for her and I felt so fortunate enough to get to know her.
That's fantastic. Thank you all for sharing. I think if you haven't checked out Coach Dell's Texas basketball highlights, I do highly recommend that as well. But seeing women in those positions and giving role models is what you all are doing every day for the female athletes you're coaching. So, but I also want to know what coach that you played for or worked with was the biggest mentor for you that got you into coaching. So, Kim, how about for you?
Well, for me, I don't think it was one person that got me into coaching. I think part of it, I've had so many coaches along the way in all the sports that I played and coming from Kansas and within my coaching, I had so many great mentors, but I think what got me into it was going into high school. We had no female soccer and I had to go out for the guys team and what I had to go through. And I've always had male coaches to play on the boys team. And I'd already been playing with a lot of the boys. It opened my eyes to want to coach because it was high school teachers and that don't have the background. So for me, that gave me the passion. I want to start coaching and I started doing camps and really getting into it. And that's kind of for me, the first moment I was like, I want to make a difference. I want girls to have soccer. And, back then it just wasn't as big with the opportunities that they have now. So.
Love it. And I know you're doing that now for our female soccer players. Heather, how about for you?
That would be a gentleman called David Carney. I met him when I was 15. He was just appointed the Irish national coach, and I was on the team at the time. So we just kind of clicked straight away. He was a coach that didn't overhaul my game. He kind of fine-tuned and made the best of what I had, not like other coaches in the past. So he always had, he always wanted to lead me in the right direction. And he always knew I had a passion for coaching. Actually got me my first coaching role. But to put it into perspective, the little things, when I was passed all my exams to be a PGA coach, you have to be elected to be a PGA member. So I asked, David, can you write me a letter? And in that letter, he actually wrote down, and he had my goals from when I was like 16 years old and remembered that I wanted to be a PGA coach. So
Wow.
Little things like that.
Sounds like we need to check out Heather's highlights. So what would you all be considered to be the most important aspects of developing a sport culture that produces well-rounded people? Obviously here at IMG, it's about athletics, but it's also academics. It's about the whole person and that holistic development. So Lindsay, for you, how do you do that, or what do you look for there?
I think actually to go off a little bit of what Heather said about that coach who led in the right direction, I think in order to create a sport culture, you have to be, as a coach, willing to lead by example. And it doesn't matter what kind of culture you want to create in developing well-rounded people, whether that's being a good teammate or being respectful. It doesn't matter what's written up on your locker room wall. If you as the coach aren't demonstrating those behaviors, then it's really hard to establish that culture. I think as coaches, we don't really have the luxury to do as I say and not as I do, because of all eyes are on us, and the players are watching us, and they'll see right through that. So regardless of what type of culture that you're driving toward to help create that good, well-rounded athlete or well-rounded person, leading by example is something that is really going to set the tone and then guide how we hold them accountable to that standard.
Yeah, I agree. I always say I'll never ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do. So, Kelsey, how about for you?
Kind of going off what Lindsay said, I think definitely leading by example is huge. And what Coach Dell said, they're looking at us as the example, right? So setting that culture for us in lacrosse, we're really focusing on discipline, right? Accountability, and being a good teammate first and foremost. Like, if you can't look to the right and the left of you and respect your teammates and your coaches and give them your all, then, at the end of the day, outside of lacrosse, outside of academics, are you really going to be a successful person? So that's really what we focus on at lacrosse here at IMG. And I think that just setting up the girls for success later down in life. So.
Yeah, I agree. I've heard some great stuff about the leadership council you all are doing and awesome stuff happening over there in lacrosse. So when you all look for a quality leader amongst your athletes, and I'm making assumption that a lot of you were leaders on your teams and in your sports and now as coaches, what are the key characteristics that you all look for? So Kim, what do you look for when you're with your soccer girls?
One of the biggest things is having the confidence to have a voice and speak up and take charge of the group, be selfless and have good character and be positive. Make all the players around you better. So just that feeling and making them a part, and all leaders as well, and that accountability with that. And then just the buy-in, and figure out a way to get their team members and everybody to buy in. So.
Fantastic. Coach Shell, how about for you?
Well, it's a little bit of what Kim said as well. I want to be able to find a person that I know that I can trust on and off the court, and they're not afraid to speak the truth, just as she said. It takes a lot of courage to do that. So, in order to find a player that can do that day in and day out, that makes a great leader.
Fantastic. So we kind of talk about the leaders, but then when we talk about those highly successful athletes, so what key skill sets do you all see in the highly successful athletes, and what they have that maybe others don't have? You can see it, right, as you're watching. But Kelsey, how about for you on that one?
Yeah, so one of the things that I really look for in leaders is, like Coach Shell said, and kind of going off of everything that everyone has said here, is definitely having that courage to speak up, be authentically themselves, right? And that takes courage. Also, I look for people that are creative, that are innovative, to be a leader. You're going to have to be willing to do stuff that you're uncomfortable with and maybe pushing the envelope a little bit. And I think true leaders and highly successful athletes are able to do that in a way that they get the backing of the team, and they're able to make mistakes, but go right out there and kind of get, whether in lacrosse or basketball, get the ball back for their team and be able to, move on to the next play and lead everybody there. So I think highly successful players definitely are creative.
Don't worry, Jen, I didn't forget you.
That's okay. I'm listening. I'm learning.
How about for you? What are those highly successful athletes have that others don't?
Yeah, it's funny because I've been thinking about this for the past year, just because, whether it's here at IMG Academy or just in general, right? You're wondering, how do those guys or girls get to that top 2%, right? Because, you see, especially here, right? You see them start at a certain level. They've got the bodies, they're claimed elite, they're claimed 5 stars, but not everybody seems to make it top tier at college or make it to the pro level. So what is it that separates them? Because I think we spend so much time on the physical attributes, and what most of the coaches are saying today, I think it also takes those intangibles. I think the biggest thing, what I've studied, is the mindset. So those players that can take the failures, the loss, the setbacks, still stay positive, still be able to have the right mindset to fight through, because most athletes are going to go through the injuries, going through losses, whether it's a death or anything like that. And you just see that's, I believe, the separation of the Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans, how they become top tier. I think you win most of your battles, or you lose most of your battles between your ears. So I would say that's 90% of, and that's in any field, not just athletics. I think the people you see that are extremely successful people have a strong mindset.
I may be a little biased, but I do agree with my sports psychology background. But I agree. I think you can just see it. You can see it on the court or the field or the course, and just really seeing it in action. And then I always think it's really about what happens when it doesn't go well.
Sure.
What happens when it's not perfect.
Sure.
And you're exactly, I love that answer. So when we look at the coaching moments, right? I mean, I know you work with kids for a long time in a developmental academy, and there's so many kids that you just pour yourselves into. And sometimes you never know if they're listening. But maybe a few years after they leave, they might shoot you a note or say thank you, or say, oh, I'm actually using this in college, what you guys taught me. So when you think about the best coaching moments in your career and why they were the best, maybe we can share a couple of those. Margie, do you want to share one of yours?
Yeah. What's really interesting that I've found over the years is the success happens when you almost least expect it. And those big moments come when you least expect it. And a few years back in my time here, I'd been at Wimbledon, and the girl who I'd been traveling with was struggling for that year. So we were at Wimbledon, and she actually took the girls' title in doubles, and then I had the other girl that was traveling with me take the singles title that year. It was just one of those really aha moments in tennis. Wimbledon is pretty prestigious, and so for me as a coach, not many female coaches on the road, just having that moment was really powerful, I think, as a coach, and then as well as for her to have that moment. And then in tennis, they make fun of me and they say I'm a red carpet, and I did love going to the Wimbledon ball, Taryn. They put on a gown afterwards, and it's just a really, really prestigious moment in a tennis coach's lifetime. So I think that's a really big moment for me.
I mean, that Wimbledon, the top of the top, you're all white, I'm sure, but probably not to the ball, I hope so. Lindsay, how about you? You had a great story around an athlete.
Sure. Yeah, mine's not one on the red carpet, but I and certainly a small moment that ended up being one of my biggest. I had been working with an athlete on the mental side of the game, particularly helping her stay present and stay focused after mistakes and so forth. And as we continue to have this relationship, she had other difficulties as well, and needed additional mental support. So we worked with her to get those resources. And I got a phone call one time late at night, actually, not that late, maybe like 8 o'clock at night. And some of her roommates had actually called me and said that they were worried about her and maybe things that she was saying to herself really not helpful. And they were worried that, that she might do something that she wouldn't be happy with, or others wouldn't either. And so I drove to the academy, and I met with her, and we had a really great conversation. She shared what was on her mind. She was really sharing some really difficult things. We created a plan, resources she needed, and everything was great. Thereafter, she really ended up having a very thriving life, remainder of her time here. And we continue to work together on the mental side, which is awesome. And sure enough, graduation comes, and at graduation, the seniors get roses, and the roses is, to give to people who they have had an impact on their time here at the academy. And I saw her after the graduation, and she gave me a rose and, just said, thank you so much for all of your help. And I said, you did all the work, right? Like, I'm just honored to have, supported your journey, but you did all the work. And she looks me dead square in the eyes and said, you literally saved my life. And I was like, in that moment, I was like, coaching is so much bigger. It's so much bigger. And like the honor that we have to work with these young men and women on sport really as a vehicle to help them find themselves and feel themselves through their life was certainly, I can get chills just thinking about it now, but it was definitely an impactful coaching moment for me.
Yeah, man, I think, you kind of have the highest of high and the lowest of lows. And what I really love about coaches and our female coaches is it's not always what's under the lights on the court. It's what happens in the shadows and in the life part of it. And I know I always say, like, life is a lot of times way more important than sport or job, and so I know all of you are there and probably have had very similar experiences with athletes that you've coached. So kind of along those lines, what's a challenge that you've experienced that has made you a better coach today? Something you went through, or it was maybe a struggle and it kind of shaped you. So Margie, let's kind of follow up with you there.
Yeah, it goes along the line of, what I was talking about previously as being one of the only female coaches, I would say years back, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I was given a challenge of a young girl who was 15 years old, and the agent said, let's get her to a pro ranking. So we took her from 0 to 198 in the world. And it sounds glamorous, but it's 3 years of being on the road each year, about 20 to 25 weeks in countries all over the world. And as a female, I'm responsible for her not only in the court, but outside the court. Getting to the train station in the middle of the night in Romania to take her so she plays her first round at the French Open the next day, and carrying the luggage and the logistics and know which country you're going to end up next, and just that level of responsibility of another girl, a young girl, mentoring her on the court, mentoring her off the court. Those 3 years were really powerful in allowing me to grow as a coach and handle so much more after that moment.
Kelsey, how about for you?
Yeah. Mine kind of goes back to more as like a transition from player to coach. So back when I played at Syracuse in college, and even further back from that in high school, I came from a very small high school, graduating class 125. Weren't known for lacrosse at all. So, kind of building myself up to being able to get recruited to one of the top lacrosse programs was awesome, right? So I got on campus and I felt all great and dandy. And like you had mentioned, it doesn't stop there. Your mindset has to push you through and help you overcome challenges. So, I mean, my 4 years at Syracuse, couple challenges. I mean, we worked together, had great teammates, lost a couple national championships, so had setbacks where next year had to get back to work and really try and come out on top the following year. But the biggest challenge I think that really helped really shape my coaching career was my junior to senior year. I lost my goalie coach. So my senior year, and I was also like the only goalie. My fall, I was doing 3-hour practices just by myself. So I had to really focus, kind of shift my mindset to a little bit of a player coach and be able to dissect film and figure out, what the other teams were going to do to be successful and be that kind of leader for my team that senior year. So I think that kind of drove my passion for coaching and wanting to go into coaching, as well as the time commitment and all the focus that it takes to be a successful coach to help get the best potential out of your players. So
Awesome. Lindsay, how about you?
Yeah, I think it was interesting in reflecting on this because there's lots of challenges, right? Like whether it's injury or whether, teams get disbanded or whether you have that near miss of a championship loss. But I think that probably one of the biggest rewards, but also the greatest challenge that's influenced me as a coach now is being a mom. And how those lives kind of transfer on each other. So I have 3 kids, 4, 5, and 7, and being a parent, I think in general is probably the greatest challenge that I have ever experienced. And it's interesting because you're there with these kids, with these children that you are responsible for, right? And you want to do the best by them, and you want to show up for them, and you, even in your best effort to try to show up for them, you don't always show up the way you want. And I think when I think about the challenges that I've experienced and the ways that I've been called to be better and the ways that I've been demonstrated that I maybe still have room for improvement on that front is in different contexts, but in similar ways what our athletes are going through, right? Like they want to bring their best and they don't always do that. And even when they're trying to give their best, they don't show up in the ways that they want. And I think being reminded of that has been a really humbling experience for me as a coach. And it's also helped me to be more compassionate for the athletes themselves. Like when I recognize that, to that extent that I'm trying to show up and I don't always show up the way that I want, they're experiencing that too. And sometimes they experience it because their youth, that shows off as disrespect or it's inappropriate or they have attitude and different things like that. And so as a coach, being able to take a step back and realize oh, this isn't personal on me. They're trying to walk their own journey right now too. I think being a mom has opened my eyes to that. I think the other part of that is parenting is a total science experiment. And so Michelle's all, and so there's this idea of it truly is the whole idea of trusting the process, right? Like you're raising these kids and you hope that at 18 or 25 when stakes are on the line and things really matter, it shows up with the way that you would have wanted to. I mean, it's like planting a pineapple, right? You put that thing in the ground and it doesn't show up until 2 years later. You don't get any fruit until then.
Right.
So it's like trying to go through that process and trust that process. And I guess going through that experience and continuing to live that experience helps me see the athletes that I coach now more effectively. I think sometimes it's hard to remember what it was like to be the new kid or to not remember how to do what it is that you're trying to do or what you've trained on. So for me, I think being a mom in tandem with being a coach, that has really informed how I interact with my athletes and how I try to take on my coaching with the athletes differently.
It's like that fantastic story about the bamboo, right? You plant it, don't even see it, and then it just shoots up and you see it later. So, so we get to work with a lot of athletes, and I think back in you lose count, right, of all of them, but there's some that really had a positive impact on our coaching career, probably a lot that have such a positive impact. And it may be the great ones, but it may be the challenging ones too when we think about it. So Heather, can you talk a little bit about an athlete that had a positive impact and why?
Yeah, of course. So going back to 2014, that's when he graduated from IMG. His name was Hunter Pauley. So this was kind of a turning point in my career, I feel. I went from just a coach to, my God, you've got to be a mentor too. But he arrived, he was an introvert, he had been homeschooled all his life from Montana. He came with an extremely bad case of scoliosis, and he also wasn't a great golfer at the time. But he fell in love with IMG. He found his passion actually in APD because we had to work so closely with the strength and conditioning team to get a plan in place so he could play through without injury and possible surgery in the future. But a couple of years ago, he's graduated from the University of Montana as an actual dietitian, has competed in bodybuilding tournaments. So it just shows that, we create well-rounded people, not just athletes here.
It's funny, it kind of reminds me of the story you told about your coach and how the impact they had, and then it kind of the tables turned a few years and you got to do that too. Jen, how about for you? I'd love to hear one of your stories about an athlete.
So for me, like you said, there's so many kids, I've been at 11 years. So many wonderful stories, so many wonderful moments. You think at some point it's more about what's going to happen on the court, those moments that you help them get through. But I think we've done our best job, especially I would say these last 6 years, of building the right cultures. Like I listen to all you women say. So, we spend a lot of time about culture and instilling things in certain kids. And sometimes you don't know if they get it, they don't get it, if you're making a difference or you're not making a difference. And so we had a girl in 2014, tear her ACL, came to Coach Shell and played for her national team in 2015. And then we were in practice in December and she's just going for a layup, tears her ACL again. So now we're on the second one. So she gets through that. She comes back and plays post-grad for me. First game, we're playing St. Pete College. She has her brace on, wide open floor by herself, tears her ACL. This kid's name is Aaliyah Lawson. She was from Canada. She is from Canada. Wonderful, wonderful human being. And to tie into mindset and to tie into so much more than just talent. We knew that from the beginning. I mean, she was just special. You just knew she was special. She had something different than your normal kid. And yes, of course, an elite athlete. So through those, we knew like how much we had to be there for her. You can't imagine what someone's going through and 3 ACLs, not 1, 3, to still say, Coach, I'm still going to get through this. I'm still going to try to make it. We got her a scholarship. She never played in post-grad after that year. We got her a scholarship to Tallahassee Community College. She took her even injured. She had to sit out a whole year. And eventually she finished, now she's at Coppin State. She led the team there. So got a Division I scholarship and finished her career. The beautiful point for me was this year she wrote a handwritten letter to me. So I think, like you said, when you have impact and things come back and you're talking about, we had this kid 3 years ago. So I think that's when you know as a coach, like, okay, I did make that difference, because if they can write this and say this. So I just wanted to share the letter. So this is,
Please.
yeah, this is one of my biggest moments, I guess, to hear a child say this. So she said, "Dear Coach Jen, I miss you so much. I honestly wish you could have been my coach forever. I learned so much from you in such a little time that we did share together. You honestly changed my life. I'm telling you, I wouldn't have been able to get through the ACL process for the 3rd time without you. I know you were just being you, and it might not have seemed to be like a big deal, but to me it meant everything. It's the reason I'm still playing basketball today. You didn't have to come with me to my doctor's appointments, but you did. You didn't have to send me inspirational quotes every day, but you did. You really didn't have to focus on me at all, but you always did. Which is just a testament to how caring you are. I remember each and every conversation we had throughout my journey, but I learned the most from just watching you and carrying yourself. You carry yourself with so much confidence and strength, it amazes me. There are times when you had every reason to hang your head, but you never did. You embrace challenges so well, it's almost as if you enjoy dealing with hardships. No, I don't. The odds were always stacked against our team, but you never flinched, and you always made us believe that we could win every single game regardless of the circumstance. I feel like you might not get enough credit for all that you do, and that's why I'm writing you this letter. Just so you know, you mean so much to me, and I feel I'm forever indebted to you. I love you, Coach Jen, and I can't wait to see you. P.S. I promise to stay true to myself, just like you always told me to. Love you, Aaliyah Lawson." So that means so we think about titles, this and that, to know like a child 4 years after is still gonna be able to carry things that, like you said, how, whether it's how you carry yourself and they pick up on that, or things that you just did naturally because you care about your kids. So that was one of my best moments.
That's, I thank you for reading that. I'm sure it's a little tough to get through. What I loved is it said you didn't have to. And I think that's such a key component of any coach, right? Like that, you know, you probably don't go into coaching for the glamour or the money or things like that. You know, I don't know, maybe you did, but when you think about it, that, you know, that why and that reason behind what you do and the fact that you get to make a difference to a kid's life, and you don't have to, but the outpouring that is shared and the way that you shape someone for their future, whether it's in their sport, their career, their life, that you get to have that impact. I mean, there's nothing that can beat that, as I know probably all of you agree with. So it's interesting because I wanna give everybody a chance to answer this one, and you know, kind of get into a little bit more of where we're going and evolution and things like that. So many of you have been coaching for a few years. You mentioned 11, and some of you have been in it longer. Kelsey, I know you're more new, but I'm sure have had a lot of experience even still. So how have each of you changed or evolved as a coach over the years? I mean, I know for me, I always say, like, if I was still doing things the same way as when I started, then there's something wrong with that. So I'm going to start, Shell, in the back. We'll kind of come across and then come back down the front. But how have you all evolved over the years as a coach?
I think I can agree with you. You know, how I started is definitely not the same coach that I am now. But what I have figured out that I'm more creative in my approach in order to get the standard that I want. The standard's not ever going to change. You can forget that. You know, I'm not ever going to lower my standard because I'm always for the prize. Okay.
I do know that. Yes.
So I want to make sure that that is always known. But my approach to how I deal with it, how I get what I want, and how our team is successful is a lot more thought goes into it. I study a lot. I study people a lot. I study those points that I know that I can reach in and seek and pull that out of them in order to get something. So I'm a lot more creative than I probably was in the beginning.
Do you have an example of one you could share? I mean, I'm fascinated after being on the court with you a few years ago. You know.
Well, you know how I was when I first started. I was actually coming from the WNBA. I mean, I'm amped. I'm hyped. I'm used to that caliber of athlete. Jen sees that every day. I mean, it peaks out, and I was like, "Oh, did I come too hard? You know, did I come too strong?" But I have that passion, and I have that love for what I do. So it comes out, and I want it to be right. I want it to be perfect. I want it to shine. I want all of those things at the same time. Now, you know, I have to be a little bit more reserved because I be scared of people. But I'm real patient because I know it's coming. If I keep feeding, you know, this and pulling this, it's going to come eventually. So I'm more patient probably than I was when I first started coaching.
Awesome, great example. How about for you, Lindsay?
Sure. I think probably one of the biggest evolutions for me is I used to be really focused on the skills, and now I'm more cognizant and focused on the environment. So I think at the beginning I would just like get my race car and drive straight toward those skills. How are we getting better here, right? Like, what are we gonna do? Self-talk? Yep, you too. All right, we're in. And so like understanding though that like that self-talk is influenced by interactions and by environment and by expectations and by all of these things. So I think as a coach now, I feel like what environment can I create, or how can I help the coaches create an environment where those skills are more invited into play, where those like the environment is structured in such a way that in order to succeed, that skill has to show up instead of like explicitly saying this is a skill you need right now. That is something that I have shifted toward, and you know, it's certainly more challenging and requires more patience, right? To what you said, Coach Shell, but that is probably one of the biggest differences in how I've seen it evolve. Because not only then do we get to create an environment in which those skills are invited, but we also create an environment in which you can clearly understand the priority of what are we trying to accomplish here. And so that's probably been my biggest evolution.
How about for you, Margie?
Yes, internally, my goal has majorly changed after 18 years of coaching. When I first arrived as a coach, it was really about myself, what I wanted to do. It was, oh, I wanted to be at the Wimbledon, or I wanted to be one of the best female coaches in the tennis industry. It was about my goals. And there was a clear moment for me, Taryn, where it completely shifted. And I was in Las Vegas, and we were fortunate enough to have a weekend where Andre Agassi and Steffi Graf and Gil Race, who was Andre's fitness trainer, game changers in the tennis industry. If you don't know tennis,
No, we know.
We know the kids right
so
now.
for me, I mean, we spent some time, and I remember getting in the car and getting on my phone and writing down or typing everything that he had said in that moment, because it was really, really powerful to me. And one of the moments that stood out the most, and when Andre talks, he always talks with a lot of emotion. You can always see tears in his eyes. And we were in the kitchen, and he said, you know, I didn't start playing the best tennis in my career till I was about 27 years old. And in that moment, I was playing tennis for kids. He said that he changed his game and how he performed because he didn't focus on himself. He focused on influencing kids.
Wow.
And I hear that a lot with some of the great athletes, great coaches. And in that moment, my goal shifted from me wanting to do what I wanted to do as a coach to wanting to have a huge platform to influence thousands of girls' lives, because we influence thousands of girls that come through here, this academy. So it was that moment where I really changed. And so probably I'd say the second part of my career so far, it's really not about me. It's about the girls and influencing them.
Wow, that's so powerful. I mean, to see Andre shift too in his play, but then to see you apply it to coaching is awesome. Heather, can you share for us?
I would say the coach that arrived at IMG all those years ago has definitely changed to where I am now. I think you get all those certifications and qualifications to prove, you know, you have all that knowledge, and then you come with all the knowledge and you realize that that's not all just what you need. We wear so many hats, we have so many roles when we come here. We have kids that come from all over the world. So sometimes you got to be a mentor, you got to put on the parent shoes, you got to be a friend, you got to be the swing coach on the tee. So we're kind of juggling all these things, but you just got to expand and expand. So I'm definitely evolved since I came to IMG.
Yeah, he definitely, it goes way beyond just the skills and techniques. So, Jen, can you share for us?
You know, piggybacking on, I think probably all of us experienced that when we first got in, because we think we have to prove ourselves, right? So our ego gets involved, and like Coach Shell said, I think you learn patience over time, right? That you're going to repeat yourself a lot, and it's okay. Just my perspective changed. Like I said, probably piggybacking off what everyone else is saying. It's just that I knew it wasn't about me; it was about them. I knew that what they did or didn't do, I still was teaching the same thing, right? It wasn't going to be based on that. I was going to be upset with that. And then I realized I didn't have to peak under my leadership. And that was going to judge what I did with them. It was that I was going to be able to teach them so much and get them so far. And that was going to be different for every child. And even in this system, I know I get them so far, and then I know what, hey, Coach Shell, it's your turn now, right? But they don't have to I don't have to get the best. Maybe it's the best of what they have in that moment, but it's not going to peak. And then I have to be okay with that. So that would be my biggest thing. My perspective's just changed completely.
Yeah, it's interesting being at the developmental academy, because in reality, we don't really want them to peak here. We want them to peak at the next
Right.
level or
Right.
college or even pro if
Yeah,
they get that
absolutely.
opportunity. How about for you, Kim?
I mean, I think you guys hit a lot of it. It's like, in the very beginning, it's been 28 years now that I've been coaching club, college, and now I think it's a combination here of both environments. And it's so much more, like you put so much into yourself to develop and get your licenses and do all that. And now it shifts because it's like now even the players are very different with how you deal with them and how they are. So it's how you approach them and how can you get the best out of each of the players, and especially a team environment. They all have to be leaders in ways to buy in. And so in finding that, to get that out of them. And I feel even within our sport, it's a lot more electronical and the video stuff and all the changes that are happening that we never had when we were younger to be able to use, and having to learn that and get better as a coach too. So I'm still evolving a lot as a coach. And I'm going to tell you, like, I'm in a room with some incredible female coaches and people, and learning from you guys and listening to your stories and everything will help me still evolve and get better too. So,
No, I agree. That learning from each other, and we all have different but similar experiences. I think I was joking the other day that we didn't even have cold tubs when I was playing. So it's been a little while.
Trash cans, right? We had to get in trash cans.
We didn't
Fill
even
them
do
up in
that.
ice.
I don't even know. I was a small school. Kelsey, how about for you with that one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously what you guys have all said definitely goes into how I feel I've, evolved throughout my career. But just going along with that, I think even more so now, especially this year, like even just this spring with my team currently, I think I've learned a lot about focusing a little bit less on the skills and more on building them up as young women and as people, and empowering them to be able to, hey, it's okay if you make a mistake, right? We're in a safe space, being able to, okay, talking it through and moving on and learning from that, right? Because I think I think we've mentioned it, just the empowering of women is huge at this point in time. So I think that's kind of how I've shifted, at least just from this spring, is really just trying to empower my athletes and make sure that, like you said, if they don't peak here, right, which we don't really want them to peak here,
Right.
when they go into college, they're able to use, those skills and to be outspoken and be courageous and be like, okay, like I know I feel confident because of what I learned at IMG.
I love what you said about mistakes, because I think everybody talked about when you first start, you think you have to be perfect, and a lot of our athletes have that perfectionism gene that's just put into them. But when you learn that you can have mistakes, and we see that with young coaches, they start out that way, and then failure is inevitable, and it's kind of the failure is inevitable, but growth is optional. And it sounds like all of you have chosen that open mind, that growth mindset. And I always joke, like, I make good mistakes every day. I'm really good at them, but you got to learn from them. So I think that's interesting. Even when we reflect, I mean, when we look at Title IX and you talk about empowering women now, like it hasn't even been 50 years. And when we think about that and how much more there is to go, it is such a key. And the fact that you all are making that impact now and gonna for a long time to come, I'm sure. So we probably have a lot of people out there listening that are coaches, or may know others that are coaches, or just in day to day. But I would love to hear from you all. What piece of advice do you have for that up and coming coach, female in business, whatever way you want to take it? But if you could talk to your former self, or talk to the kids coming out of college that might be coaches, what would you say to them? So let's start Heather, and we'll go around kind of the opposite this time. Mix it up a little.
So kind of the same thing, you come in and you try to prove yourself. But when you come to IMG, you're just going to be part of the team, right? So I think the main thing is to be open-minded. You've already said it. There's so much knowledge from all over the world, all the coaches from all over the world that bring it, and experience that they bring. So an open mind, ask questions all the time. I still feel like even just this chat we've had today, that I've learned something. So I'm learning every day.
Absolutely. And I think it's amazing, because I think we get a little spoiled here, because you can walk out and there's so much going on. And I have a lot of kids will say, I don't even have that at my college. They don't have all these resources or facilities or great coaches, or, the nutritionist or the mental coach or leadership coach. So I think it's interesting, like, how do you take advantage of the resources? Even if you're not here that long, you can learn so much. So I love, obviously one of our core values is having that open mind. And I think you're right. That's such a huge aspect. What about for you, Margie?
I think we talk about goal setting a lot as a company here, and I think having a vision is really important for yourself, but also understanding that when you have that vision, you may do jobs along the way that are not directly related to that vision. And we do that here at the Academy, but looking back at all the different roles that I've had, I always wanted to do what I'm doing today, but along the way, there were times that I did jobs that I was it was not related to the end result. And those are those jobs where you're learning the most amount of skills that you're picking up. There's always a skill that you can pick up on anything that you do here at the academy. My first role was with videotapes, and then going to teaching adults, and but there were skills that are really, really that I hold close to myself that I learned during those moments. So I'm really grateful, and I just encourage all the young coaches or new coaches or staff. You have a vision, be open-minded to trying different skills because you're learning for a reason.
Absolutely, definitely. Lindsay, how about for you? What advice would you give?
Well, originally I was gonna go with the kind of what Heather said about like learning from others. Just the amount of experience here is remarkable to learn from. And I would say, I guess to go on the other side of it is to remember that your coaching is your craft, and that takes practice, and that you're not always going to get it right every time. But if we have that mindset to be willing to learn and to make those refinements and to give ourselves some grace as we go through that process and hold that vision and that standard high. I can remember one time I had gone out to New York to do mental skills with an all-girls school where we were teaching confidence from little kindergartners, every age group, all the way up to seniors. I know, it's the sweetest thing. And right, I'm talking the whole time about like being willing to like raise your, like speak your voice and to raise your hand. And, in fact, in the sessions themselves, I would give this example of, it's like, have you ever been in class where you knew the answer, but you didn't want to say it? And then the person next to you raises their hand and says the same thing, and you're like, what was my answer, right? And we kind of use that as that, like, to see how to take action and lean into that discomfort and be willing to raise your hand and have that confidence. And sure enough, I get back from those 48 sessions and 48 hours is what it felt like. And I come back here and I got invited to join sort of this round table with Sam Sussman, who was leading and kind of getting to know employees and having conversations, wanted to hear. And I felt super stoked that I was asked to come to this thing. And David Hesse, our VP of performance at the time, asked, brought me in and said, like, how do you want to present yourself in this situation? And, do you have any questions that you would want to ask? And he helped coach me into this process. And we came up with some questions that I felt super stoked about. Ones I was curious about, and what have you. Sure enough, we go into the room and it's me and a bunch of other men, right? And which is no problem and no stranger to those environments. And sure enough, he comes in and he says, you know what, I'm not going to give you guys a presentation. Let's just start out with your questions. What questions do you have? And I'm like, this is the moment. This is what we trained for. And sure enough, I have this question in my mind, but in that moment, like hesitation showed up, right? And doubt showed up. And I didn't raise my hand. I didn't ask the question. And I swear to you, the person next to me raises his hand and asks the same question. Okay, I've been in that experience before. And Sam Sussman looks at him, he's like, that's a great question. Let's check there. And I'm like, it's fine. And I'm reflecting on that, being like, I just taught all these little girls, all these young women, how to lean into that. And I found myself in that moment still needing to practice leaning in, right? Like still needing to practice the craft that I'm working on, whether in coaching or whether in the content that we're talking about. I mean, in that moment, my doubt could have filled the Empire State Building and I didn't raise my hand, right? And either way, we like that. That's what I would encourage our coaches that are up and coming, is to recognize that it is a craft and it does take practice, and to continue to show up and try to live in that space and learn from others along the way.
Oh, love that story.
Well, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about Margie doing videotapes. I did the same thing. I had an 8-burner, and we were getting those films out to our basketball families.
DVDs eventually.
Oh yeah. I'm like, listen, hey, I'm the best. So if you want that done, I can do that for you. But one of the things I would leave and really say to them is to build your philosophy here. Mm-hmm. Don't wait till you get a job before you get your own philosophy. Really, just like you said earlier, there are so many coaches that are doing some amazing things on campus. Spend some time, just walk around and listen, and just say, hey, does that suit me? Because I think many times coaches think that they have to be a certain way, or they've had a coach that they most admire and they try to emulate their system or their way of thinking, or how they present themselves, and that's not you. So you have to find a philosophy that really fits you and that you can grow on, that you can expand. That's one of the things that I liked when I first started coaching, that I would go to different places and speak to different people, men, women, I didn't care who it was. If they coached something, I wanted to know what they were thinking. And I was able to say, I'll take that. I won't take that. I don't want to be that. I don't like that. And I was able to really formulate my own style and my own philosophy, which I've, grown and, like I said, picked and choose what I wanted as time went on. But I think that's important, especially if you're on this campus. You have the ability to reach, so many different coaches and maybe take their ideas and make your own philosophy. But I would tell you, don't wait till you get that big job or the next job or whatever before you start working on your philosophy.
I agree. So everybody, make sure you're getting your coaching philosophy down. And I think the other thing to add, Coach Shell, is, you talked about it earlier, but you might have one at the beginning and then it's going to constantly evolve. But there's usually some core components that will stay the same, how you approach certain situations or the way you work with the athletes. But yeah, having it and thinking about that, I think sometimes some coaches forget to actually understand that guides everything you do. So that's a great piece of advice.
And here you have time to think.
Yes.
That's the beauty of it. And I think, many times I came here because of quality of life. And, just living a life of hustle and bustle, and I never could think. I knew what I wanted to do, but I never could think. And I came here and I can actually think and I can formulate, I can touch, and I can, it's a lab, just like you said, I can experiment without, it being a big cahoot, So that's one of the things. Don't take this for granted. This is something that you need.
Yeah, love it. Kelsey, how about for you?
I think just going off that, and you actually mentioned it earlier, having a mentor that you're able to, really confide in and talk to, they'll help you with your philosophy, right? And kind of ground you in certain situations that you might not feel comfortable in or have questions about. I think that that's a really good tool to have for any coach, and also be collaborative. I mean, you mentioned it before, there's so many resources here at IMG, and definitely are a part of the team. So utilize all that and learn as much as you can.
It's funny. I remember being in the shoes coming out of college, hoping for a job. I still am thankful every day that, when I drove myself down on my spring break and interviewed here, I somehow got the job. I have no idea how. But it's funny because I always remember that you talk about mentors or being willing to help others, because I answer every email and phone call, and I shouldn't say this, but probably LinkedIn and like people reaching out for advice and help, or that say, hey, can I talk to you? Can I meet with you? Because I remember being there. And if there's one thing, I would say, if there's one thing you can say that a kid gets or somebody in coaching gets, then that can make such an impact on their lives. So I love it, having the mentor, and then you actually then get to shift to be the mentor to others. So taking advantage of that is always fantastic. Kim, how about for you?
Well, we've said a lot. So I would say just bottom line is be willing to work hard, be willing to take chances like you guys are talking about, and make mistakes, because it's going to happen along the way with all of us, and be open to learn from the incredible and like everybody on campus and probably in the company with the hours that they've coached and put in. So you learn a lot from that. So that's the biggest.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna see a lot of coaches wandering campus now. I like it. Come visit anytime. Jen, how about for you?
And I, again, piggybacking off of that, when Coach Shell called me about the job taking it here, I think that was, and I think most people think that when they're looking at job opportunities, is you want to know you're going to grow professionally and personally. And IMG Academy is that, right? Like you said, you're surrounded by so many great people. So taking the time, like everyone has said, and making sure you know people in other sports and learning from their craft. I remember when Stan Van Gundy was down and he was just amazed, right? Because in basketball, we have 15 teams, right? So it doesn't matter what level, you can always walk out there and see somebody doing something and learn something. And I would also say, it doesn't matter who you're coaching and what level. You can learn from them. You can be great at it. You don't know who's going to watch you, who's going to see you, that it's not your title doesn't matter here. You know what I mean? That you just have the opportunity to come out, do something great, make a difference in the kids' lives. And like everyone said, and just sitting on this panel, how much we learned and how much, I don't even know if we all know each other super well, but you know, that's the thing, like to reach out and make sure that you are connecting with people, because we have it in our backyard to really, really grow. Like people, you don't go anywhere, and I'm speaking on basketball, that you're going to have 15, 20 teams,
Yep.
right? You're going to have the girls team and the boys team, and that's it. And you're going to hopefully be able to learn from them. We have 21 different coaches we can learn from just within our sport.
Yeah.
But then you can step to tennis, step to football, soccer, learn footwork. Yeah, here's the place you really can grow professionally and personally.
Love that. And so, you know, we talked a little earlier with Women's History Month wrapping up and Title IX not even being 50 years old. And we've seen some great trailblazers and breaking the glass ceilings and the barriers, whether it was female coaches now coaching in men's leagues or two female Black coaches in the Final Four of the Women's March Madness. But you also see the inequalities of what the two March Madnesses look like and things like that. So if we think about that world of sports, how do we see the roles of women evolving? So Kelsey, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to jump up to Coach Shell. How do you see how women's roles could evolve? And I think we see it in a lot, and then there's still those challenges out there.
Yeah. So I think it is awesome to see women, you know, being involved in typically male dominated sectors, like you mentioned. So we're definitely taking steps in the right direction. And I think in the future, I think we're going to continue to see us moving in that direction, where it's going to be more moved away from female athlete, right, to more of like an athlete kind of centric sort of environment. But I think in order to do that, I think we as coaches and as female coaches have to continue to empower our athletes that are coming up, you know, under us, and continuing to challenge them to be courageous and confident when they have chances to raise their hands, right? To just make it we got to leave it better than we came into it.
Love that. Coach Shell, how about wrapping us up with this one?
Well, I guess I've seen so much myself, but I would want those young ladies who get the opportunity to be prepared. So when they open their mouths, I mean, they are saying, they're spitting it, they know everything. So I would be one of those ones that would want to make sure that they're educated in what they're speaking so they can get the respect that they need. I think, you know, we can do anything. And I truly believe that, and I think it matters if it's a men's team that they're coaching or a women's team that they're coaching. I think that we are strong and powerful enough to, you know what we're talking about, and then somebody be able to receive it. So, you know, I'm excited. You know, I like watching, you know, football, and I look over and I see a female up there, and she knows what she's talking about. You know, I got much respect, girl, you know, and that makes me feel good because somebody prepared her. Somebody prepared her for that. And she received it, you know, and it just take an open-minded person to realize that it doesn't matter, you know, if it's male or female. If you know what you're talking about, get the job done. It really doesn't matter. So I'll coach boys, I'll coach girls. It doesn't matter. But when you open your mouth, know what you're talking about.
I agree. I mean, I think we always say that preparation leads to confidence, and it's such a huge thing. And any athlete doesn't really matter. And I'm excited to see where things go, and the fact that you all are providing such good examples and great role models for the next coaches, the next athletes, but that they are seeing the leadership that you all are bringing. And so I want to thank you all for joining me today and being on the Coaches Corner panel. And hopefully everybody enjoyed, you know, really hearing about the journey of a female coach and the insights that these ladies have shared. And of course, we want to welcome everybody to, you know, if you have questions, if you want to chat, I'm sure all of us, any of us would be more than happy to do that. And we're excited to see where the next journey takes all of us and the next people that will be on the journey with us. So thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And thank you for all the ladies that joined today. Have a fantastic day.